Hello and welcome to another tactical video, exclusive for you, the Patreons. Today, me, Skari, I'll be talking about ITC Mission 2. We're going to look at the different style of the way that the objectives get placed. I'm going to talk about every single deployment type. So that's what I'm going to be doing for you today. We already broke down Mission 1 of the ITC. Today, we break down Mission 2. Let's begin.
The Dark Kin.
So let's talk about mission number 2. It's called Cut to the Heart. You have one objective in the middle of the board, which you can't really see. we'll change the camera angle in a second. And then you have two objectives, one for each player. You place this after you know essentially where your deployment zone is. So we're going to talk about the strategy of placing your objective and trying to get the enemy objective as well. The bonus point in this mission is you get a bonus point for controlling the center objective and your opponent's objective as well. So you want to try and do your best before to try and get the most points out of your game. So let's dive in with the first type of deployment. Okay, so the first deployment style, spearhead assault. Pointy, hammer, and anvil. One objective right in the middle of the board, right here, and then one for each player. So, depending on who decides to put their objective down first, the thing about your objective is you have to try and stop your opponent from getting it. So, very simple way of doing it would be to find a spot way in the back, 6 inches from any table edge, and put it essentially right at the back. Now, this is great and all, but it gives the enemy a lot of avenues of approach to come and get your objective. The second way to do this is by putting it more towards a corner, either or. Now this can depend on something like terrain. So if there's good line of sight blocking terrain, you can hide it, you can hide a small little unit out of line of sight and really kind of maintain your objective nice and hidden, which can be very useful. The third type is putting it somewhere where if you have an army that is very reliant on getting into the enemy and killing the enemy, you want to try and maybe put it somewhere that is a lot more aggressive, something as close as this. Like that you can try and control both objectives while having a very little part of the board. So if you have, say, Talos, Grotesques, something very nasty in close combat, you can then control two objectives relatively easily and be very easy to get the control more objective, which is highly important in this mission. Now, conversely, if your opponent decides to go very defensively with their objective, you can make it harder for them to get the objective by putting the objective on the opposite corners, as you can see. So you put one over here, one all the way over there, and you can spread them out. If they're a very slow army, that works really well. If you are a very slow army, you might want to do something that isn't that pronounced and put the objective close by, so you don't have as much room to cover from one objective to another. See, and that's where this mission can get interesting, especially this style of deployment. And it's pretty much the same for hammer and anvil, except for hammer and anvil you get an extra 24 inches up. So let's go ahead and do hammer and anvil deployment, which is deployment style number 4. So we'll just transition. Why? Because the concept is pretty similar nonetheless. You have, a 24-inch line up. Now this gives you a little bit more options. You can put your objective very aggressive here, or aggressive on one flank, or aggressive on the other, or more centralized. What do I like to do? I like to put it, in a corner. Why? Put 5 racks or 5 Cavalite warriors in the back. It blocks off deep strikers in the corner and stops the enemy from getting it. Okay, so that is for both spearhead, assault, and for hammer and anvil. Let's go to the second style of deployments, which are Dawn of War and frontline assault. Deployment styles 3 and 4. Well, in this case, it is frontline assault, which is technically number 5, but you still have the objective right in the middle and one each. So the concept is essentially the same here. Only 3 objectives on the board really means that this middle one becomes relatively important for the hold more objectives. So if you put it centrally in the middle, like this is something I would do with grotesques and tailors, you'll have higher control of both objectives, getting into this zone and controlling more objectives than your opponent. Now, conversely, if your opponent has more of an aggressive assault army, then you might want to make it easier for you to hold your objective and put it off on a flank, for example, to force your enemy to split up. Now, if they're a very fast army, you might want to reduce the benefit of their speed and put it close by. Now, if they go aggressive and they go like this, right? Then if you put it here, you're giving them an advantage. You're essentially giving them all 3 if they're a very aggressive army. So if you want to spread your opponent out, you put it on one side. If they go to one side, you can either, if they don't have an aggressive army, do that, or maybe even stack the one side of the board here to then push this way and try and control this area of the battlefield, essentially if they've deployed stuff over there. You can also try and force your opponent to deploy badly. So if they go back here and you go there, you can always put something on this side of the board over here, and now you've split the board up. So if you have a lot of speed, you might want to do that. Split your opponent up and force them to try and get objectives all over the board. This mission 2, is really focused on secondary objectives, and I am going to do another video on picking the best secondary objectives. But the same concept for this applies to Dawn of War, which is the 12 inches up, essentially. So all you do is move the deployment zone up another 6 inches, and now all of a sudden you have, it's not as pointy, just 12 inches up, essentially. Same concept. You have a lot more space, a lot more room. Oop, a couple inches down. But essentially now you have a fringe all the way across, which means you're not relegated to the bottom here. You can put it up here if there's good terrain, or you can put it off to the side if there's the line of sight blocker in the middle, essentially. If you want to hold an objective, make sure that there's terrain nearby to hide stuff out of line of sight, for example. When all else fails, try and put it in a position that's easy for you to hold, especially in this mission. If you think your opponent is going to take it away from you, and you have very tough units, you can put it out right in the middle of the open so that if they ever hold it, you can kill it right away. Or if you're trying to bait them to take it, you can deploy back here, wait till they take it, and then pounce on them and kill them. So that is deployment 3 and 4, or technically 2 and 5. Now let's take a look at the weirder style of deployments, which are Search and Destroy and Vanguard Strike. Okay, so we have Search and Destroy deployment, or colloquially known as table quarters. This quarter, that quarter. Pretty straightforward. So there's one in the middle. You're 9 inches away from it, so it's very simple to jump onto the middle. But you don't always have a very aggressive style army. So let's do the same sort of concept. Basic concept is the same. You can't put an objective within 12 inches of another one, but if you want to be very aggressive, you might want to put it somewhere there. Now this up towards the middle of the board means that you're designing to essentially go this way around the table, or you're pushing through here and you don't really want to go this direction, which means that you can concentrate your army on that side and push. Now, you wait for your opponent to deploy first. And a lot of the times your opponent will put something back here just because they want to make the most distance for you to have to go, from all the way over there to all the way over here. That's fine. They have their Castellan over here. They've got an Imperial Guard, blobs of guys, etc., etc. That's why in this mission, secondary objectives are so important. But if you can put pressure on that middle objective, say going second, you can almost guarantee that you get the always hold more as long as you're controlling this one and your own. So it's all about the fight for this middle objective if you want any bonus points. And you have to try and get it without giving up too much of your army. Now, if your opponent has Gallants or has Thunderwolf Cavalry or Death Company and they want to be very aggressive and they put it up here, don't fall into the trap of making it very easy for them to capture. So don't go ahead and put your objective here unless you feel that you can control all the objectives. Like, a game this aggressive is going to be over in a few turns. Whoever can beat the other person in close combat, right? If you want them to go as far as possible, it might be a good idea to put it, say, on that corner over here, or 6 inches away, sorry. But in this corner here, especially if they did something like this. So if you spread them out, now that's a very long distance as well. You want to use terrain to your advantage. Usually there's like big line of sight blockers in the middle of the board and towards the side here. But essentially, if you're an aggressive army, try and keep them nice and close together. Say you have Tailors and Grotesques, that concept does not change. If you want your opponent to have to spread out because they rely a lot on auras or bubbles, then spread out the objectives as much as possible to force them out of their comfort zone, out of those auras, out of those bubbles. If you're trying to turn this into a hammer and anvil deployment so you can get longer range and you shoot more, then put your objective over here so that as you sweep around, it turns into that hammer and anvil and you're still controlling your deployment. If you're trying to turn this deployment into Dawn of War, you want to push out this way, which is a little harder because then you've got a lot more like space to control over here. Then put your objective down on this side. Okay, so let's look at the 6th and final deployment style, Vanguard Strike. And last but not least, Vanguard Strike. 1 triangle here, 1 triangle here. So, as always, deploying the objectives comes first. So the concept stays essentially the same. And I'm going to be ramming this home, guys. This is super important. You have to understand, if you're very aggressive, you put it aggressive. You put it somewhere where you can control 2 of them at a time. If you're not aggressive, you put it as far away as humanly possible, back in the corner, back over here, out of even the camera's sight, just so you force your opponent to go as far away as possible. If you want to turn this deployment into a hammer and anvil deployment, you're going to be putting it along these lines here. It allows you to sweep and push this way. If your opponent decides to put their objective right here and is going to be very aggressive on this side of the board, then it might be a good idea to put it here to force them this way or to make them move more distance. And that's the thing. This objective placement can win you or lose you the game, especially on mission 2, which is cut to the heart. This, putting it so close, if you don't have good objectives secured, makes it a lot easier for the opponent to jump on both objectives and take the bonus point. But if you have good aggressive units, it allows you to control more objectives, and that will give you more of a bonus throughout the game. Now, if your opponent has a bunch of close combat stuff and you don't think you can deal with them, don't be shy, put it away. Come and get those objectives later, but keep your stuff alive first. Control your zone and then push into the enemy with what you have left. So I hope you guys enjoyed this next tactical video. It's mission 2. We have 4 more missions to get through. So if you like this style of video, leave a comment down below. Send me a message. Thanks a lot. You guys help me create this. I hope this stuff really helps you, these guides, to increasing your tactical acumen in game. Make sure you find me on the Discord channel, send me a message, and you can even chat about it if you like to chat and whatnot. So we'll see you guys next week, where I do the next video, this week actually. And I am Skari, signing off until next time, guys. Skari out.